All right. Lots of things. Oh, there we go. I was wondering how this was going to. I have. Thank you, all the gentlemen here, for agreeing to be on this panel. This is going to be fairly open talk. I've sent out some questions, but we actually didn't pre-discuss because I wanted it that way. I want a real serious, frank discussion on ad fraud. Before we launch into that, there's a couple of things. This is from Kroll report. 75% of the companies experienced fraud incidents in the past year. Kroll Global fraud report. Within the advertising space, some news says that the marketing industry is $77.2 billion problem. Bots infecting half the web traffic. $3 spent on digital ad fraud takes $1 for every $3 spent. First question to the audience. Is this fake news? Are we dealing with fake news here? Is this stuff real? Is it hype? Is it just, someone making up all this stuff? Are these vendors making it up so that they can, take more money out of the system? Who wants to take that first? All right, Chris.
I'll have a go. I read something from the Federation of Advertisers last year, basically said, and this will answer my question, is that there's only, behind drug trafficking, ad fraud is the number 2, or it's going to be the number 2 largest form of organized crime in terms of the amount of money that they make out of ad fraud. That's the projection over the next 5-10 years. This is from the Federation of Advertisers. That means ad fraud is a bigger problem than human trafficking. It's a bigger problem than the arms dealing, illegal arms dealing. It's a problem.
And I don't get the death penalty for it.
No, I think that if anything kind of hits home that it's a problem, that's it. I mean, the stat there, the 7.2 billion problem, I think that was actually worked out at only like 5% of ad spend. That 7.2 billion, that was from the stat from last year. But it's so big, it's going to only get bigger. And unless there's a standardized way of measuring, and to answer your second question there, no one is actually taking responsibility to stop this. So that's the problem.
Rahul, let's hear from Google.
Okay, so on the last note, it is one of the big. So Google has actually waged a global war on ad fraud because it is a big problem. And just to give you context, we took down 1.7 billion malicious ads last year in 2016. And to put that into perspective, if you were to, let's say, block every ad manually, and if you do it would take 1 second to block one ad, it would take more than 50 years to do this. So that's the extent of the problem. The other issue is that we are hearing a lot more about ad fraud in the last couple of years. Why? Because ad fraud is now penetrating performance campaigns as well. And I think Pallav could maybe talk a little bit about those as well, because since he has great experience in that area. But performance marketing has more rigor because it's predicated on measurement and things like that. What about branding? And when brand marketers have metrics like impressions and reach and things like that, they can be very easily faked, right? So, and that largely goes unnoticed because you can report whatever you want, and who in the world knows whether that ad impression was shown to that person who belongs to your audience segment or
Sanjay,
whatever.
from a mobile perspective.
To answer your question, is this a news? No. Right? We always knew the fraud exists. It's just that we're becoming more cognizant of the fact that the fraud is there, and there are measurement and metrics in place to kind of counter that fraud. I was reading a report for last year, 2016, just the mobile ad fraud contributed about $1.3 billion. And yes, you're right, so it's getting into the performance segment as well. It was mostly an impression-led, but now click, install, and event-led as well. So, yeah, so the problem is there to stay.
I'm jumping. It used to be, click farms, right? So, but, we're talking a lot of impressions, right? So what is it now? Paul, can you jump in? Like, what is fraud? What's going on? What's happening?
Fraud is like everywhere. So it can be an impression-led fraud, it can be a click-based fraud, attribution fraud. So whatever we marketeers have thought that yes, we can change the financial terms and be smarter than the agencies or publishers, the fraud starts there. So earlier when we were buying CPM, there was a lot of impression fraud. We said yes, let's move to a click-based model. We have to pay only for CPC.
But it can't be, $7.2 billion worth of people sitting around clicking, right?
It might be much more than that. 7.5 is what we are able to track probably.
But it's not people clicking, right?
In fact, click farms are still easier to handle, still manage, but there are also these organizations that use very sophisticated algorithms who have these botnets that actually thrive on hijacked phones and devices. And so that's, it's a scale that...
That was the keyword I needed, a little botnet action. So I got these hats that prove these guys are human.
Fantastic.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
It says hashtag not bot.
Not bot in the back, yes. No, it's getting the issue is now it's algorithmic, it's bots, it's malware, it's different things are out there, right? So detecting it, how easy, how hard, what's happening in the industry?
I think the scary thing is like the tools that people are bringing in to try and fix it are being reverse engineered to then, so all the solutions coming out, being smarter. I think it's kind of akin to like a virus, right? It's every time you find an antidote to the virus, there's another strain of that virus, and that's the scary thing. You're constantly chasing your tail to try and find how to stop it. So it's there will be, I think, if I can speak more from a mobile first perspective, it's probably more. We're finding out how to find it on a regular basis in mobile because it is a new ecosystem. Everyone's trying to figure it out. But the fact that in digital it's still happening is a bit scary. They're finding all the MethBot stuff that came out last year. That's very much impression based and is online as well as mobile. So if it's happening there, and obviously the Indian market is very much a mobile first market, it shows that this is a global issue and across all devices.
I think fraudsters will exist where the money is. And for the first time, we're seeing mobile overtaking the desktop display ad spend. There is click-based fraud, there's install-based fraud, and there's an event-based fraud, right? And bunch of things. And fraudsters are a step ahead, as Pallav mentioned, than what an advertiser or a publisher can do. So there are bot-based fraud, there are click hijacking that happens. So various kinds of frauds. For example, there's one thing to detect the fraud, there's other thing to prevent the fraud from happening. Right? While you might save money on not paying for a fraud install, for example, but if there's somebody who is hijacking your organic install, so everything downstream looks very rosy for that.
Yeah, you're paying for the affiliate.
And then you keep paying for that, anticipating that, I have a great performance from him. So that's a bigger issue.
So this is a true false for the group here. If advertisers want all human traffic, they should direct the publisher and pay, and pay more, and not have to deal with programmatic. Is it a programmatic issue? True or false?
It's completely false. And it's not that it's advertisers who are suffering because of ad fraud, it's also publishers. Because it's these kind of organizations that are in the middle. They're trying to fool both the advertiser as well as the publisher. And I think programmatic, it's not really related to the extent that everything is anyway moving towards programmatic. So in the US, which is the biggest market in digital, has 73% programmatic. The 73% of the market is actually programmatic, according to eMarketer report for 2016. So that's how it is anyway mainstream. What programmatic allows you to do is at least measure it, so which you can't do otherwise. So there is, and what Google is doing is, even if you're not able to prevent fraud, because sometimes you're not able to do it, we at least report it. We're transparent about it to our customers. We report to them, okay, this is the fraud that we couldn't avoid, and we don't charge them for that.
So you're saying it's easier to detect it in programmatic because of the systems are
Yeah, the systems are there because
Palav?
it's all automated.
I would say the problem exists everywhere, both on the programmatic side and the other direct publisher side. For advertisers, it's usually not possible all the time to go to direct publishers because many of them are too small to contract directly. So programmatic is the only choice we are left with. And programmatic, yes, does solve some problems, especially companies like Google and DBM, because they are a lot more evolved. But there are hundreds of programmatic solutions out there who are probably not doing anything about it.
Chris, any
I
comment?
agree, everything that's said. I think the biggest problem is that I think we need to work out the way we measure campaigns, because the reason I think a lot of publishers are being the rates of selling their inventory are getting squashed, and they're still trying to figure it out in digital. And some unscrupulous publishers are doing things which makes their performance look better than it actually is, because they're being squeezed and they're desperate and they're making they're sending through clicks asynchronously when they shouldn't be. So I think it kind of, when you do go direct, it does remove some problems for sure. But I think if we can actually work out that everyone's paying fairly for what they're receiving, then I think that works out. I think, for example, if you look at a cost of an install in the Indian market, it's actually very, very low. I think it does need to increase. But the reason it's so low is because everyone's got a fixed idea of what a price should be. So publishers are losing out because of that, and they're being desperate. They're making attempts to, change and game the system, so they make more money. So I think there's a part of in how the value of the media is looked at as well as a big part of this. That will help.
I've got this report, Click Fraud Index Rate by Country by Apsala, 2015. India's ranked number 2. I don't know why this thing keeps on flipping. Sorry. It's the bots. Yeah, it's controlling my clicker and his PC. India's the index 100 is the average, and here India's 282. Do you agree with that? Yeah, as in Hong Kong's number 1, India's number 2, Indonesia's 3.
Yeah, I won't agree to those numbers specifically. I don't know whether it means the fraud happening in India or happening out of India, as in fraudsters based in India or out of India. So I think fraud is a function of mainly 3 aspects. One is, as Chris said, the amount being spent, the payout. Then the ease of pulling off the fraud. What kind of sophistication an advertiser has put in place for fraud not to happen. And third is how unique the inventory is. So it's a mix and match of these 3 parameters, and basis, wherever the index is high, you will see more fraud. For example, if you see US should have a highest fraud, but there is a little more sophistication, that difficulty to pull out fraud is far higher. So therefore, the fraud is not as high as it is in China, or for that matter, Hong Kong should be far higher, but the unique inventory limits the fraud to happen. I think the payout in India are much lesser. So there isn't enough incentive for a fraudster to go out, at $1 CPI versus 20 cent CPI, where would you want to do fraud?
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily agree that there's fraud existing in India, where these fraudsters or bots or emulators, I don't know, I mean, that's an open comment to have, whether that's existing out of India or not.
So I would tend to agree that India would have one of the highest cases of fraud. Why? Because most advertisers actually miss the wood for the trees. They don't want to pay a little extra or a little bit of percentage extra for ad serving. And ad serving, so India is one of those very unique markets, very unique large markets where the advertisers don't want to pay extra for ad serving. They obviously are not then measuring the full impact, the full view of what their digital is bringing to them. And so obviously when you are not measuring or you don't have those checks in place, your publishers, your partners are going to take you for a ride.
Palav?
Well, I would say whether it's India or any other country, because of the huge demand which India advertisers have, like that obviously creates a lot of pressure because of the low price points. And second, India is a lot less tech advanced to even try to detect all these things, and it makes it a lot more easier for anybody sitting anywhere in the world to fraud Indian advertisers. So that probably will make India probably an easy target. And probably Indonesia, Bahrain, Vietnam, who are growing economies as well, would fall into similar bracket.
Yeah, I like your point. It's they follow the money, right? If I was a bot master and I have a big botnet and I'm going to go make money, I'll go after the high CPM rate, wherever the markets are. Right?
No, it's to the virus approach to it. No one is immune. It happens anywhere. They will follow the money. High CPMs, or in markets where there's lower filtering systems to stop from this happening. It happens everywhere. I think just
premium CPMs, right?
Yeah,
Or higher, even in a market that might have an average of $10 or less, but there's premium.
I would imagine that obviously this breakdown here is from an app MMP.
AppSala, yeah.
And that's focused on the app marketing. I think every market is probably unique in the different types of fraud they do receive and the degrees of each one. I would say India probably is higher in some respects, higher than the US, but lower than the US in others. So interesting.
I think someone's clicking over there. Now, as an advertiser, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, digital, you guys got fraud, right? You guys got wastage. I spent half my money. I don't want to do digital. Do you hear that? Do people actually do? Advertisers are just like, are we scaring people away? I mean, what's the thought of the advertisers these days?
I think as long as you have the right metrics in place, right measurement platform in place, which helps you not only detect but prevent fraud, then I think that interest is protected. I don't see. Of course, there's a concern, but not the reaction that you gave.
The thing about digital is it's the only platform that is truly digital, truly measurable, and therefore you can actually have a dollar ROI to every, or an ROI on every dollar that you're spending. And the trick, as Sanjay also said, is to have the right measurement platforms in place. So let's say, what's the impact of, let's say, a video ad that you see on your 3-inch device or a 4-inch device, leading to an interaction on your 13-inch device, leading to a purchase in an offline store. Now that's cross-device plus online-offline measurement. Now that's the kind of things that you can do. So you can actually look at what's the impact of any impression that you've shown or spent money on. It's truly it's measurable in an unprecedented manner. So it's just about measuring it in the right way.
Can advertisers afford to say, I don't want to do digital because it's just too complicated and there's fraud in it?
No, we cannot. Well, in true essence, that statement which we have probably meant for TV or other offline channels, because measuring those was almost impossible back then and even today. Digital at least gives you that platform and ability to measure. And the problem here is because of fraud, we don't know whether the consumer that we have acquired or the app installed that we have acquired is actually real or a bot. That is why I don't know whether 50% of my spend went into actually acquiring customers or just paying somebody sitting in some farm.
I think the headroom in digital is so high, right? This is where the next set of audience is coming from. While in terms of, I agree in terms of absolute dollars, TV might be still more. But in digital for next 5 years, we're going to see 40%, 42% CAGR in ad spend. So, and you know what, we're about 250, 300 million smartphones on a 1.2 billion population. There's like 75, 80% headroom to grow there. So that's where the eyeballs are. That's where a marketer would want to spend money.
I think the panel before us were talking about, OTT and TV spend is going to go there. It's going to go to online video. It's going to mobile video, all those kind of placements. So people aren't going to not spend on there because they're worried about digital advertising now. It's going to get cracked. It's part of this the huge growth which is going on that people are taking advantage of that, and it hasn't settled down. So it will be. I've never said a client saying, "Oh, we're questioning our digital spend." They question who they work with. They question certain publishers and certain third-party tech providers who are maybe pushing them down the wrong path because they're making money out of their lack of understanding. But no one's talking about, particularly like digital businesses. They've got to be. That's not a worry at all. It's just how they spend it is the key thing.
Yeah, when we talk about TV ratings and everything, right? That's based on what, a couple thousand households across all of India, and how from a measurement perspective, how the heck do you know if it's waste or well, let's not say fraud. That's a whole different discussion for the TAM here. But is it wastage? You don't know, right? And so we're tracking it. I guess, better than traditional media. Well, it's not even ductile print.
We've created a rod for our own back, haven't we? You can measure absolutely everything, particularly on mobile, down to the device, down to the individual. So you get those data points thrown straight back at you if it's not working. That's a blessing and a curse, but definitely more so a blessing.
So that's an interesting point. So there are now tools available in the market which let you attribute whatever you're showing on TV on digital. So I think it's just a matter of time between we see the online and the offline worlds, the traditional and the digital media kind of converge, where you will be able to look at the interplay that's there across channels, across devices, across platforms, and then truly be able to say that, okay, did that ad on that channel really have an impact for me? So it's just a matter of time before we see all of this come through.
So is the technology to track, detect, or block fraud, is it available? Is it good? Is it good enough at this point from what you've seen?
Yeah.
If you want
we have a product in place which there were certain measurement techniques before also, whether it was data dimension modeling, click to install time, or IP filtering and receipt validation, but the need was to do something more, right, to prevent the fraud from happening rather than just detecting. And there are tools. There's tool available which can help you. For example, if I just take a minute to explain, we have a product in place which takes some 20 metadata signals into place and a complex big data algorithm, completely inbuilt and in-house developed tool to identify. So it rates and ranks the device on every click and install and event parameter to identify whether the install is genuine or fraud on that scale of device rank that we have, AAA, AA, ABC, and stuff like that. So there are tools. There is tool available to identify, detect, and prevent fraud.
Google's been doing this for years, yeah?
Google's been doing it for years, and we also acquired a company called Spider.io, which specializes in ad fraud detection. But Google's take on ad fraud is based on 3 pillars of people, processes, and policy. So, of course, we know that there is this Google-grade infrastructure which runs to actually prevent ad fraud from happening before it happens. Then there is a huge team of ad ops who are there to kind of manually look at any ad fraud that probably would have slipped through the filters. And at the end, of course, there is the thing about policy. So you'll find that a lot of advertisers would complain that I'm not able to get my ad through Google. Can you get it approved? It's something as simple as that, because ad fraud is just not about showing, let's say, click fraud and things like that. It's also about trying to deceive the user into an offer which does not exist, right? So for Google, it's just not about the ad business. It's also about a great consumer experience and ensuring that all the stakeholders in the ecosystem are happy. So whether it's the publisher, whether it's the advertiser, whether it's the ad tech industry.
Pallav, do you get a lot of people coming to you and telling you, here's how we can solve the ad fraud problem? Sorry? Do you get people coming to you and saying, here's some solution, ad fraud, all this stuff? Or?
Yes, a lot of companies have now started investing in ad fraud. Some are doing a great job, some are just starting out. So yes, a lot of companies are doing it. I think it's a question of ability and intent both. Though some companies have the ability right now, advertisers and publishers probably don't have the intent as well. So we need to have the right intent first, and then ability will definitely catch up.
Chris, are you... I'm not doing anything.
The bots have got us.
The bots have taken over. Chris,
just to add to that point, I think what the problem is that a lot of the tools out there are doing a great job to sort out as of what they're seeing over the last 6 to 12 months, but they're not really catching up with the fraud. I think a lot of it is about detecting the fraud, which is a great start, but no one's bringing something which can prevent it in terms of stopping it before it happens. And I think it's got to the point where us as an agency, we do a lot of mobile marketing, app marketing, digital stuff as well. We've actually had to apply our own formulas and processes in place in-house to basically see what the hell is going on, because the tech out there isn't there. And I know that a lot of other advertisers have done the same thing, because the third-party measurement platforms are doing a great job, and they will get to that point, but it's not quite there yet. So those who are quite advanced in it have to do things themselves, and that's just the nature of just a fast-growing.
Are the advertisers smart enough to actually say, we're willing to pay for additional solutions to do this, or they just say, I don't want to pay anymore, I don't want to pay anymore? Mr. Agency, that's part of your cost, that's what you need to do for us.
I think we're a performance-based business, and if the campaigns don't work, then we don't get any work. So we have to make sure it works. So sometimes we'll take that on ourselves, yes. I think the very smart and savvy advertisers, and I'd put Clearship as one of them here, are very much figuring out themselves, working it through, and coming to the best solution. And sometimes that's a tech solution. Sometimes it's literally about looking at the data and drawing the right insight from the data, because it's all there. You can do it. It's just, I think everyone talks about big data. It's not about having the data. It's about how you draw the insight from it. And you only know that if you actually understand the space, you understand what type of frauds there are, how to find it within the data. And then we work with our partners, our suppliers, our networks, our publishers, and we just show them. We say things like, it's absolutely impossible for an install to happen within 3 seconds of a click. It's impossible. We've tested it. That is irrefutable evidence. And we've got the data points. AppsFlyer are great. They've got the data points we can draw it from and show that to our suppliers. And they go, yeah, got it. So it's all about working together, because if we all just kind of take an approach of a hammer and say we're not paying for this is fraud, then the suppliers are pissed off. But then the advertisers have been in a situation for quite some time where their budget's been wasted. So I think we've got to find a solution where we sit around a table and work it out, because if we just take a kind of a sledgehammer approach, we're not going to find a solution.
Can you put the last slide up? Because I don't know why it stopped, but I've got a couple minutes left. So when I go to questions from the audience, anybody? Everybody knows everything? You good with ad fraud? Don't worry about it? Taking care of it already? Okay. We can all go home now? Or at least go for a drink? Anyway, I was going to ask, whoever was going to ask a question, I was going to ask them to answer this one first. But I'll go across. Like, who's responsible? Right? Who's responsible for taking care of this stuff? Agency, the inventory, publisher, myself, all the above, whatever. So I'll go across. This is the last question for it. So who's responsible?
The ethics code should say that everybody should take their own responsibilities. But in the end, I think advertisers, because it's their money, they have to take the first stance towards it. And if publishers or agencies are not up to the challenge them towards it. Larger organizations are definitely waking up to it and talking about it and working towards it. But unless the ecosystem starts talking about it at a much larger scale than probably we are today, it's not going to happen.
Chris?
Yeah, I would say it's everyone. I would add on the measurement partners on that as well. People like AppsFlyer and MAT and all those guys as well. The Googles, the DoubleClicks, all those third-party measurement tools. I'd add them onto that. But yeah, it's everyone sitting around the table and figuring it out, because it's the problem is just trying to work out who. A lot of people turn a blind eye to it because actually, spends are still going up. Advertisers' budget, they're hitting their KPIs even if they're not the right KPIs. Publishers are getting more budget even when they shouldn't be. So it's trying to find a common ground, because it's not always in everyone's interest to fix it. And that's the challenging thing. We need to find that common ground, and that comes from the advertisers to actually come in and start that conversation. But we all need to work together. But if the advertisers say, I'm not doing this anymore, then that's the best way to do it. And when you look at, was it P&G CMO Mark Pritchard a few weeks ago said, look, I'm buying programmatic and I don't know what's going with it. And they basically they've stamped down heavily on it. It's those kind of statements, those positions which are going to start the conversation, and then we all need to work it out.
Are you finding that advertisers actually will say they're part of, they need to start that discussion and push to figure this out?
So for digital to be truly successful, it has to be strategic. It has to be elevated from the point of just being an ad hoc campaign, but something that's more core to the way the business is done. And it has to be tied to an outcome in terms of a business objective. So that's only possible if advertisers kind of take the ownership of all the data, all the measurement that they have. They don't look at it from the point or the silos of, let's say, branding, performance, offline, online. The moment you have, let's say, flaky or very superficial metrics like a CPM or a reach and clicks, these are metrics that can be gamed, and they will be gamed, right? But if you can truly measure what's the impact of each and every dollar that you're spending, there will be, the rest of the guys in the ecosystem will kind of, you're the advertiser, it's your money, right? So if you demand accountability, you'll get it.
Well, I think the responsibility is for everybody in the ecosystem. right? Advertisers can't, shy away from this, saying that, hey, it's my money, I spend money, go figure out. I don't necessarily believe an ad network or agency has an intent to create a fraud, but it's the sub-publishers' IDs which gets kind of mixed into it and the fraud gets created. And I think I will add to the Chris' earlier comment, if you minimize and restrict the payout to that degree, which is like kind of squeezing blood out of a network, they are bound to kind of put in certain fraudulent things in between, which we can debate whether it's good or bad. But I think, yeah, it starts from advertiser being responsible himself, then publishers, ad networks, and of course the measurement platforms have to play their role in identifying any such bad practice and reporting it back.
Yeah. I have a last question. Anyone in the audience want anything? Have any questions? All right. So my question is just a quick one for the future, right? We're increasingly getting AIs, personal AIs. And going forward, how can you distinguish an AI from a nefarious bot? Chris, you want to take that one? Or you're laughing.
I have no idea how you can distinguish between the two. If you're speaking to Alexa, you like to think it is
Alexa, go get me something.
Yeah, you like to think it is her, or however you want to call her, would be that. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem for tomorrow. That space has started, and I'm sure we'll be having panel conversations about this in a year or two's time, figuring that one out. But yeah, that's pretty scary. That's probably scarier, right? Because that's them like knowing a lot about you and being able to do things around you as an individual and as a business. That's even more scary than just a misattributed install.
Counter AI with AI. So you'll have AI versus AI.
Sorry?
You'll have AI versus AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still don't know how to differentiate between humans and bots, so I don't know. When will we be able to differentiate between humans and AI?
Are you using bots to fight bots?
Yeah.
That's what we are doing.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for a great conversation. Thank you, everybody.